On today's episode of Locked On 76ers, a 2-point win over the Boston Celtics for Philadelphia. And it wasn't easy, but they did get another fantastic performance from the big fella. What did it all mean? Keith and I will break it down next, right here at Locked On 76ers.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Give online therapy a try at betterhelp.com/lockedonnba and get on your way to being your best self. Hello all and welcome. Thanks again for making Locked On 76ers your first listen. I'm Devon Gibbons from 97.5 The Fanatic Radio here in Philadelphia alongside my co-host and partner as always from the Inquirer.com Sixers beat reporter Keith Pompey. What's up, Keith?
What's good, D? How you been, bro?
All right. A nice little win and win number 52 on the season for the boys.
Yeah, it was a good one. I mean, you know what? This is the most wins that they had in the regular season since, the process. Since they start winning these 52 games. Start winning these games. This is like the most for them. So,
okay. Yeah. Well, listen, we thank everybody for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day. And remember, Locked On 76ers is free and available on all platforms, including right here at YouTube at Locked On 76ers. Keith, we got a lot to talk about. Good win, pick up win number 52, lock in that third seed as well. The magic number was 1, so they lock in the win. With the win, the third seed, so they cannot do any worse than 3 in the Eastern Conference standings. We'll also talk about, of course, some struggles because the two scoring players in the starting lineup, Tyrese Maxey and Tobias Harris, combined for 10 points in the game, shooting 4 for 16 from the field and a combined 2 for 8 from beyond the three-point line. We have to get into that. But first, Keith, we have to talk about the win, obviously, but another tremendous performance from Joel Embiid. Game high, 52 points, 13 rebounds, 6 assists, all being done in 38 minutes and 37 seconds. But Keith, he shot 20 for 25 from the floor. And a lot of that came from the mid-post area where he shot. He typically shoots those jump shots from the nail, 15 feet in or out. And he was very, very efficient, very, very good once again, as we heard a lot of MVP chants in the building in the game.
Yeah, he was phenomenal. I mean, when you look at it, the guy shot 20 for 25, 12 for 13 from the foul line. That was a stretch where he just, it looked like he couldn't miss a shot, at certain times. I mean, the crazy thing is, like, he started out, he had 18 points in the first quarter. Then, second quarter, I believe he only had 6. Then he had 14 in the third and 14 in the fourth. But he was phenomenal. He did everything. The biggest thing that really stood out to me was those 3 assists that he had in the fourth quarter to PJ Tucker on those threes, because old Joel Embiid would say, look, I'm baking, I'm hot. I'm going to keep shooting. And he didn't do that. He made a great pass to a wide open teammate, and PJ was able to bury it. But, we talk about the MVP. Doc Rivers said that he is the MVP. I have to agree with him after this performance, especially on national television. He showed everyone why he's going to be the most valuable player this season.
Yeah, he said it post-game. Doc Rivers saying the MVP race is over now. After that performance, asking what else could he do. He scored more than half of the team's points as they scored 53. He had one more point than the rest of the team had, 51 in total. And it wasn't like he was just gunning, Keith. He was doing it in the flow of the offense. They were coming to him. They had a 6'4", 6'5" guy on him. Why wouldn't he look to score over that while still being able to navigate over top of the defense and see what's going on? He really had it going on, man. And I agree with you. I agree with Doc Rivers and many others. As we said, everybody was just bellowing it down on him of the MVP chance, especially Keith. Remember when he went to the free throw line late in the fourth quarter and the crowd was just giving it to him for the MVP chance, which were, again, well-deserved, not only for the season, but obviously for the performance that he was putting on in front of the home fans, but also, as you mentioned, as the national television broadcast was in the building for Turner and putting on that type of show in a game against a team that is their division rival that they hadn't beaten all season long. So I agree with you. I agree with head coach Doc Rivers that he pretty much solidified the most valuable player award with that performance there at home.
Yep. He was phenomenal. I mean, you got to give it to him. And he scored half their points. Not only that,
more than half.
More than half their points. Yeah, more than half their points. They don't. I mean, put it this way. I feel like they don't win the game if PJ Tucker doesn't make those threes, right?
Agreed. Yep.
But he was the one who passed them the ball. You know what I mean? So he was the one who got those assists. So EMbiid was phenomenal.
No, he gets the respect for that because, to your point, old Joel EMbiid would have certainly forced the shot. We've seen it before this season where there were some open teammates and he still forced the shot in a big spot. But tonight, the way the defense was playing him, especially late, he had to find a teammate. Unfortunately, the ones that he's usually able to count on from Harris and Maxey wasn't there tonight. But he found Tucker. He was open. He made the one. Then he made the next one. And as a result, man, he kept going to him in that third one, put them up a little bit further, putting them over 100 points with that three-pointer that he knocked down. All three from the corner as a result of Joel EMbiid being able to be in the middle of the floor, navigating how things were happening, the defense shading to him, and he found P.J. Tucker for those shots. So you have to give him the props for that and how he handled the defense. He turned the ball over 3 times, but it wasn't bad turnovers like we've seen in the past where we've really, really gotten on him for coughing up the basketball the way that he has. So he was phenomenal once again, and I guess we really shouldn't be surprised at this point with the performance that he does put out there. Keith, on the other side, we need to talk about this basketball team, but some of the things that didn't go the way that you would have liked with the others. We'll talk about them and why they need to tighten up, especially if they are going to face this team potentially in a second-round matchup against the Boston Celtics later on in the month of April going into May. We'll do that when we get back right here, Locked On 76ers.
Let's talk about motors, right? eBay Motors, right? So for a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit you just right, right? So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guarantees Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part fits well. Or you get your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop at eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home and win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Thank you for making Locked On 76ers your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast. Nightly recaps of every NBA game with analysis from our local experts. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Keith, 51 points from everyone else. Decent game from James Harden with his 20 points and 10 assists. A much better bounce back from what we saw against the Milwaukee Bucks in 40 minutes of play, which was a team high. Also, getting good production from P.J. Tucker with the 3 3-pointers, had another bucket to give him 11 overall. And then you had, I thought Jalen McDaniels played some good minutes off the bench in his 15-plus minutes of play. Paul Reed also playing decently out there for the short time that he was on the floor, gathering 3 rebounds, 2 of which were offensive again with his 2 points. But everyone else, Keith, struggled. And this is something that we have seen against Boston that they're going to have to figure out. Tobias Harris did have 19 the last time they played tremendous defense against Jason Tatum. And the Celtics were without Jaylen Brown last night and Robert Williams, two starters, or at least starter for Brown. Williams has been coming off the bench as of late for Joe Mazzulla's team. That was something that they need to figure that out before they get into the playoffs, especially if they're going to face the Boston Celtics. Malcolm Brogdon, he did his thing again, coming off the bench, giving them really good production as Derek White started. But Malcolm Brogdon, with his 18 off the bench, outscoring the Sixers bench by himself, where no other Celtics players scored in their time on the floor. A little disappointing to see the showing from the others, even with EMbiid getting the touches and the volume of shots that he was able to get. I thought that you would get a little bit more from some of the others.
Yeah, I mean, the concerning part, to be honest with you, there's two things. There's two things that really concern me. One was Tobias Harris' performance. I know you said he had 19 the last time, but I just didn't like the way he played. I felt like offensively, I don't know if he was rushing or whatever, but it just seemed like he didn't find his groove. But the thing that really bothers me or concerns me if I'm the 76ers is Tyrese Maxey. I mean, here's a guy who's basically been struggling all season against his team.
Yeah.
And he did it again. You know what I mean? Like, he was 2 for 8, 1 for 4 on threes. He had 5 fouls. He had 4 turnovers. Now, he was a plus 17, but on this night, I feel like he was you really can't go by that. You know what I mean? Like, I hate to say it. Like, sometimes you want to give people credit, but I just feel like, his shooting he just wasn't there, and he was just fouling all the time, and he had 4 turnovers. So the thing about it is just Maxey, he needs to play better for the 76ers to win. He definitely needs to play better for them to win. And I'm talking about beating Boston. He plays well against other teams, but he just doesn't against Boston,
It's almost like when Ben Simmons would play against the Celtics in the past, and the obvious part was they would build that wall in front of him to make things, really difficult for him to get things going. But with this team, from the length of Tatum and Brown, who are two very, very good wing defenders, and then last year's Defensive Player of the Year in Marcus Smart as a guard, they have 3 different players that they can throw at Maxey where they feel like they can put one of the others on Harden and Harris specifically in that starting unit, that they feel comfortable of slowing down and disrupting what Maxey does. It's almost as if they're saying, look, we'll take whatever Joel gives us, 52. We'll take what James Harden is going to give you, 20 with the 10 assists. But if we feel like Maxey is the head of things and he's the key, he's the X factor, let's take that away. Similar to what, again, we talk about there with the Ben Simmons part of things in the past, where they would really, really take away some things from him. And it was very effective of how they would beat the 76ers without Ben Simmons doing Ben Simmons things when he was right. So that is something that they're going to notice. And Doc Rivers talked about him. I wrote down one of the quotes that he's have to get him, Maxey, involved. And he had 8 shot attempts. He turned the ball over 4 times, as you mentioned. But when the ball got to him, and there was one play, Keith, where EMbiid wound up hitting a jumper to make it, I think it was 88. And he knocked down the jumper. But there was a pass from Harden in that same possession where we've seen Maxey pull up from 27, 28 feet on the catch confidently and just rise up and shoot the 3-pointer. The ball came to him in a very similar way where we've seen all season long from him, where he confidently rises up in that spot on the wing with a big spot in the game, and he didn't shoot it.
Mm-hmm.
He dribbled, he backed up, he reset, and then kicked it again, and EMbiid ultimately made the shot. But you could tell that by the time we got to the fourth quarter, he had no confidence.
Yeah. That was obvious that he didn't. I just think that they're I think they're just a bad matchup because they're athletic as hell. The other team, they're just really athletic and they can play. So it's kind of like a lot of times now he can play too, but a lot of times his athleticism and his quickness gives him a huge advantage. But they're like that team. They may not be as fast as him with the ball, but they're always one after the other. It's like a maze. Like you got to get past one dude, and then there's another one waiting for you. You know what I mean? And they
The,
take and
the help the help defense is good.
yeah, yeah, exactly. The help defense is great, especially, and they got a bunch of wings, man, a bunch of them. So, and they're long too, man. They're just a long squad. So I just look at this as a bad matchup. But he has to snap out of it
Yep.
and figure out ways. And like you said, he can't be scared to shoot after a while. He got to continue to stay aggressive and do stuff. You know what I mean? He can't let that impact his decision making.
Not at all. Not if they're going to win, and especially against that team in the second round. They're going to need him. They're going to need him in a big spot. At some point, they're going to need him. It's going to call for him to beat Tyrese Maxey. He has to figure that out against that team. Using that speed, getting to the cup, scoop layups, floaters, those types of things. They're going to need that from him. He has to figure that part out. All right, Keith, on the other side, our final segment, we got to talk about this whole thing with the team and finally getting this one off of their back. Why I thought it was important, why you thought it was important. Now, after the game has been played, do you still feel that way? Why it is still important for me? We'll see about what you have to say on the other side as they get this win, as close as it was and as frustrating as it may have been down the stretch, because, boy, did they have trouble executing. They still picked up the W. We'll get into it next in our final segment right here, Locked On 76ers.
The NBA playoffs are almost here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and threes drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com locked on. That's FanDuel.com locked on. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Welcome back to Locked On 76ers. That's Keith Pompey. I'm Devon Givens, and we appreciate you hanging out with us. Keith, poor execution down the end of the game, down the stretch of the game, having to get Maxey involved, needing more from Tobias Harris, not enough bench help from Melton, Niang, who were a combined 0 for 7 and 0 for 5 from 3 overall, but they still picked up the win. As I mentioned on our last podcast, I talked about it on the radio. I just thought it was a psychological thing that they had to pick up a win. Jaylen Brown rested in the game as he was out for the game with low back pain, Jaylen Brown, and for Robert Williams, left knee management. So they sat two of their guys that play big minutes and are key pieces. So maybe it didn't mean as much to Boston. They didn't need it to be. They've won 3 games already. They have the tiebreaker. The Sixers can't do anything to catch them. Doesn't seem like it with 3 games left, back 2 games in the standings. But the Sixers needed this just to know that they can beat Boston in a game, albeit not as pretty. Needing a big performance from EMbiid once again with the 52 points and 13 boards with 6 assists. They got it done. Now seeing it play out the way that it did, as frustrating as Doc Rivers was, and you talked to the players also after the game, do you still feel like this was a worthy enough win for them to get that monkey off their back, if you will, and picking up this W?
Yes and no. I mean, I think it's good for a confidence boost, but I mean, kind of like make them feel good about themselves, and they had to do it. the one thing is, I think when the Sixers had all their guys playing, and we know they didn't have their second best player and they didn't have their top defender, rim protector on the defense on the backside, it kind of sort of like how much was this team trying, right? Now, the one thing I noticed, Boston came out very vanilla, right? And then in the fourth quarter, they start ramping stuff up.
Because they stayed in the game.
Yeah, they stayed in the game, and they were able to ramp stuff up, and they tried. Now, again, I felt like I'm not saying they were going through the motions. Now, granted, Joel Embiid was baking them, but I felt like there wasn't really a sense of urgency until the end because, like you said, they were close. And then they bring Blake Griffin in, and he's out there looking like the second coming to Dennis Rodman, grabbing all those boards, right? But at the same time, I do think that for the Sixers, it's good to get this victory because then they look at it as if, like, you know what, we played bad, we did whatever, because they did turn the ball over a lot in the fourth, but they're saying to themselves, but we still got this win.
You didn't get swept throughout
Yeah,
the season.
they didn't get swept. But no matter how we like critique it, whatever, they can always say, whatever, but a win is a win. And so I feel like with that being said, it was a good win for them. I mean, it is something. But again, Boston didn't have two of their players. They looked extremely vanilla for three quarters. But at the same time, a win is a win. And it's something that the Sixers could say, at least we got the monkey off our back.
It's easier to look at film knowing you have a W, correcting the mistakes while still picking up that win. And an important one in this case of not being, again, it's one thing to just simply talk about, we got swept. And they didn't. They didn't get swept. Now, it's a different thing when they get to the playoffs. Maybe they take game one in Boston at the TD Garden. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they lose game one and take game two and come back to Philadelphia looking to do their thing back here in front of the home crowd. Whatever it might be, they got the win, and that was important for the psychological part of knowing that you can, again, at least compete and beat this basketball team. They're going to have to figure some things out once they get there, but they got the W. And there's some things to figure out from the maxi piece, the bench piece, slowing down Malcolm Brogdon and the impact that he has. Derek White also having an impact against the Sixers team all season long. Those are things they're going to have to figure out if they're going to try to get past Boston and that second round. First up, of course, the first round matchup, but it all looks like that they will be headed to a second round face-off with the Boston Celtics in round two. Keith, thanks so much, man. Thanks, everybody, for making Locked On 76ers your first listen. For our next episode, we're going to preview the Sixers and the Miami Heat. Another big game, probably the final big game. How much will they play? I think they should. How much will they play? We'll talk about that in our next episode. Now make your second listen Locked On NBA, Locked On experts covering the biggest stories around the league. And every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes is free and available wherever you get your podcast. Keith, can you let the good folks know where they can find us?
Yeah, man, definitely. Wherever you get your podcast, you can make sure you get this podcast. One of those things where, like Dee said, it's free and easy, free and available, whatever to do. Also, what you need to do is you need to go to our YouTube channel. And, when you get our YouTube channel, Locked On 76ers, click on that Liberty Bell and then become a new subscriber. You get notifications and all that. But tonight, I want y'all to listen to my man D on the Divine Giving Show from 6 to 10 tonight. So definitely do that. Follow Devon on Twitter at DivineG975. Follow me on Twitter at Pompey on Sixers. And you can read my articles at Enquirer.com.
Keith, as always, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, for listening and watching. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Peace.